Okay, so now we're on to part 2 of the Fundamentals of Logo Design lecture, and it's a little bit more advanced, slightly, process of logo design, but we'll go over that. We're going to go over the logo design process. This is the general process that you would take. Meet the client, you'd research the client, some of your ideas, thumbnails, come up with your thumbnails. Start your design in Adobe Illustrator, which is the correct software to use for designing a logo. Once you come up with your rough draft in the Illustrator software, you would show the client your rough draft. You would start with a black logo, of course. You'd get approval on the black version of the logo, and then you would create a rough draft of the color logo and then get approval from the client for that. Finally, you would outline your fonts in your document so that your fonts don't drop out of your Illustrator file when you share it with other designers or entities. Then you would create a folder structure and save file types using correct naming conventions for your files. And then you would zip that root folder and send it to the client. So we're going to kind of go over this in a little more detail. So you would meet with the client. This is the first step in the process. You gather the name, any ideas or expectations, brand colors, competitor names, discuss your budget, get examples of designs that the client likes or dislikes, any kind of information that you can gather at this stage that's going to be helpful for you. So once you meet with the client, you can kind of go home or take a little break, come to a place where you can research your client, check out their websites, check out their products, look at their storefront if that's applicable, and check out their competitors, and then just look for some design inspiration. Think of some symbolism that you can tie into your logo design if you can think of anything. Figure out what colors you want to use, figure out what kind of fonts you want to use, just come up with some ideas during your research phase, and then complete 25 thumbnails. 25 is actually seems like a lot, but it's actually not a bad place to start, especially with a logo design. And then refine those down to 5 of your best ideas, and then show those 5 best ideas to your client. It might be best to just show them the 5 best ideas instead of all 25, because they might choose one that's not really that great. And honestly, you're the designer, so you need to steer them in kind of the right direction in some ways. So you may have to make changes to a thumbnail sketch based on client feedback and then show the client again. But once the thumbnail sketch is approved by the client, you can begin transferring that thumbnail sketch into Adobe Illustrator, which would be the next process. So you would start designing in Adobe Illustrator. This is the software of choice because it creates vector-based files. And vector files are higher quality, and that's the preferred file type for logo design in the graphic design industry. Vector files, the one thing about them, they just never get blurry no matter how large you make them. So you can size them up to like as large as the town of Havre in like theory, and it would still not get blurry. The image would not get blurry as long as it's a vector-based file. So Photoshop is actually a pixel-based software, and you've seen those little tiny blocks of color that make up a picture on a screen, right? Those are pixels, and pixel-based imagery will become blurry when you size it up. So making logos in Illustrator for vector-based file types is the industry standard for logo design. So that's why we use Adobe Illustrator for logo design. So once you get it done in Illustrator, you show the client the rough draft, which would be the black logo first. Then you can make tweaks to it if you need to, but once that black logo is approved by the client, you can start on your color version. And then you can show them the rough draft of the color version, get approval on that. And then you can move on to outlining the fonts. So any kind of font that you have in your logo, which typically logos do have font, usually in the form of the name of the company, and then so you would select that font, go to type, and then also create outlines. So that's how you outline your fonts. go to the menu type at the top menu and create outlines. You can also right-click it right on the text box with the text box selected, or control-click on a Mac, or right-click on a Windows machine, and find Create Outlines in the drop-down that comes up when you right-click. So definitely outlining fonts is very important, but it's one of the last stages. It's actually something that you do after everything is approved. And then this is the kind of the part where you really have to go in and make sure you get your folder structure right. Make sure you get your naming conventions right. Make sure you're exporting out the correct file types and saving the correct file types from Illustrator. So this is actually an example of a correct folder structure. It seems pretty complicated, and that's because it kind of is. So, you know, you want to name your client. You want to name your main folder. This is the root folder. You want to name it with the client name. You can use spaces in folder names, but not in file names. So that's something to remember. So your folder structure within your root folder, you'll have two folders nested inside of the main root folder. One for screen, one folder for screen logos, and one folder for print logos. So in each of these two folders, there should be folders for each color version you create of your logo. I would say most logos have a black version, a white version, and a color version, at least. Some have all red, or all yellow, or all along with that. So there might be even more in here, depending on client needs. So in the print logos should be exported out at 300 ppi, which is high resolution, so they aren't blurry when they're printed. They need to be exported out in CMYK color modes so that they will print correctly, so that the color looks right. The color version of printed logos should have CMYK at the end of the file name to indicate the color information. PDF files can be used for logos needing a transparent background on printed designs. Printed logos should be exported in AI, JPEG, and PDF file formats. They tend to print best. Like I said, the PDF is great for supporting transparent backgrounds. So if we zoom in on this slide a little bit, because this is pretty small, but so 300 ppi, CMYK color mode, AI, JPEG, PDF, at least. There might actually be other file types. The PDF is great for the transparent background. So we have black, white, color, and then we have an AI, JPEG, and PDF of each of those with the color information in the logo file name. So these are the color ones, so CMYK, white, named it with white, black, black. Screen's a little different. They should be exported at 72 ppi, which is low resolution, which is great for screens. They should be exported in RGB color mode. The color version of screen's logos should have RGB at the end of the file name to indicate that they are RGB. Screen logos should be exported in JPEG and PNG file formats. Screens don't really support other types of files, so JPEG and PNG files are what's used for screen. The PNG is good for transparent backgrounds. JPEGs will not support a transparent background. They'll automatically fill it in with white. So this is an interesting slide. There's a lot of information in this slide, but it's a very useful slide. So, like I said, oh yeah, all logo names should be named using the company name and should indicate color information. All file names should use camel case or underscores to separate out words. Spaces do not belong in file names. Okay, so try to remember that. You can put spaces in folder names, but not file names. So once you get your folder structure set up, that's basically, you can zip that root folder up, which is the folder that is the root of everything. That's why it's called a root folder. And zip that up and send that to the client, and you can breathe a sigh of relief because you're done now. So that's about it for part 2 of the Fundamentals of Logo Design lecture. And make sure that you check Brightspace for the quiz on this. All right, talk to you later.